Okay, we're all here. All right, I want to thank everybody for joining our live event today, Finding Your Venture. I am Jasmine. I will be moderating the room for today. Max will also be helping and navigate the conversation. We are joined here today with Brian Hayden. Brian is the co-founder and managing partner of HeatSpring, course and podcast creator of Redesigning the End, and is the entrepreneur in residence at the University of Michigan. So today, Brian is going to bring us his most impactful knowledge and really take insight into our guest's business today and really kind of get into the nitty and gritty, answer any questions that our guest might have. So I just want to again thank everybody for joining us. We're going to dive right into the conversation and really hear a lot about our guest's business, what he has going on, and how we can help. So Brian, I'm going to hand the mic over to you so you can introduce our guest for today.
Thanks, Jasmine. Thanks a lot, Max. I appreciate you guys setting this up. Arick, I'm really excited to hear about your business. And I think rather than me trying to introduce it, why don't you do it? Explain what it is you're working on, and we'll dive in.
Yeah, that sounds great. My name is Arick Davis. The name of our company is Last Mile Cafe. So we are a coffee business based in Grand Rapids right now. Our primary thing is, selling coffee beans like through our website. But we also do like pop-up events where we'll like bring coffee and like make drinks at events and stuff as well. I think some of the things that sets us apart is that we're a Black and woman-owned coffee business in Michigan. We do compostable bags and cups for all of our coffee. We donate 10% of all of our revenue to charity, and we have a exciting, I won't say it's unique, but we have an exciting system where you can actually pick which cause your money goes to, and then we let our community vote on that. And then I think we just make really delicious coffees, but as you know, that's extremely subjective.
What about you? How'd you get into doing all this? What's your background?
Yeah, so I studied electrical engineering in college. And as I was kind of graduating from that, I knew I wanted to start my own business. I knew I wanted to have like an impact in the community. And I had also like fell in love with software while I was in college too. So we were just trying to figure out like what type of business like made sense and that we were excited about. And me and my partner Sarah was like, we really want to work for a business that like gets us excited to like show up. And that's ultimately what we created. I started drinking coffee probably way too young because of my grandma. I just remember I have a 12-year-old daughter, so I distinctly remember seeing her at like 5 and like walking in on my grandma like giving her coffee. I'm like, no, you can't do that. And then I was like, oh wait, that's probably why I ended up here too. So so ultimately we just built a business that we were excited to work for, and it kind of just made it like a culmination of coffee being a very interesting commodity and like lending itself to storytelling, being able to, I think, impact an idea that will help move the industry forward a little bit, like with compostability and like transparency. And then also just having a company culture that I fit into and that our team seems like they're fitting into and getting excited about as well.
How about you and Sarah? How did you connect and, I guess, decide to start working together?
Yeah, so she was my romantic partner first. And I think we knew each other for like all of 2 months where I was like, hey, I was working on another startup at the time called We Inspire. It was like an ed tech startup. And I was like, hey, marketing stuff, right? Do you want to help with these things? And she's like, sure. And I was like, well, I guess we're like technically dating, but like, you have the skill sets. And, 5 years later, we went into this business as just like, even 50-50 co-partners.
Mm. I met my wife at work. Dangerous, but great when it works.
Yeah, we're a great team. We communicate very well. Like she knows me, so it's like there's a lot of pros to it. We work well together.
How about doing startups? Like, where did you learn about entrepreneurship and like how did that become a thing in your life that you knew was possible?
I think just growing up, my mom and my dad were both like entrepreneurs in their own right, and like I always saw it when I was a kid. I did like, the classic, like selling candy, then selling like mixed CDs, and then, graduated to like selling iPhones and stuff like that. Like being in technology, I learned how to like jailbreak iPhones. So this is super nerdy, but like back in the day, you could only get it on AT&T. And I learned how to like unlock them so people could use it on like different service providers. And then I ultimately ended up like selling those on like eBay, and I would sell them like internationally. So like I always was like attracted to like business, but I think it took until college where, I took some business classes and really learned about this other side of entrepreneurship where you would actually like try to build like a business model or like follow a business canvas and like really try to solve a problem. And that was where I ended up coming up with the idea for my first startup. And then my second startup was just like technology consulting services. And now this third business is really where I want it to be, where it's kind of like a mix of everything. So kind of naturally, and then just always gravitated towards it throughout life.
Mm. Yeah, I was just reading Trevor Noah's got an autobiography, and he talks about the CD burner that he got being like the thing that like launched his life. You know what I mean? Like, and so hearing you talk about the mixed CDs, like I can relate to that. Cool. So how come this business, like you what's the coffee story like? How'd you get into that?
Yeah, I mean, like so as the first startup was kind of like winding down, like I was like, didn't really have a clear revenue model. I was very passionate about it. We were trying to like sell to schools, which was like, it's a whole nother thing. And like, ultimately, like when we let that business go, we were like, okay, let's like take a step back and really try to like build a business that we think will work. That still had all of like the social impact stuff, that still had like opportunity to grow, and like coffee, like this is the way my brain clicked. I was like, all right, at the end of the day, a business has to sell something. Like what has been here forever and what will be here forever. And I was like, alcohol, tobacco, and like coffee and tea. And I was like, I'm much more comfortable selling coffee and tea than like any of the other two. So, and that was how we kind of settled on that, as like, okay, we will build a business off of that does everything else that we ultimately want to do, you know, in the community.
Cool. I love it. So what were the first steps you took, and kind of what have been the milestones, like, and where is the business today?
Yeah, so the first steps was really, you know, after we decided that we wanted to do coffee, was really like trying to just learn more about that industry and like confirming some of our suspicions, like, you know, is it growing? Like, is there room for like a new business in the marketplace? Like, what stands out like a good coffee business versus like a great coffee business? And we were like, okay, well, the industry is growing, like there's opportunity. So that kind of was like a stamp of approval. And then we started like really making a list of like, this is what we want the business to be ultimately. And then took like a very classic, like, okay, what can we do now? Like my background is in engineering. So it's like, I see huge problems and I'm like, great, like what's the smallest piece of that we can build and start working on? So ultimately the first step was we started tasting coffees and trying to figure out, you know, what we were going to do. I very quickly learned that like, I didn't want to like start off with like roasting coffee or like buying green coffee. So we ended up working with like a roasting partner. From there, me and my partner Sarah like designed the label and like the packaging, and like found a place where we could order bags. And then like with, you know, our background being in like technology, we were able to like build our own website, set up our own social media and all of that fun stuff. And then like I am a salesperson naturally, I feel like, but my two team members at the time weren't. So I was like, hey, we're just going to set a small goal. The minimum case size we could order was 500. So I was like, all right, our sales goal is to sell 500 bags of coffee. And I was like, let's start small. Like, how do we sell the first 10 bags? How do we sell the first 100 bags? And then how do we sell the first 500 bags? And that was kind of like, that's how we got started, was we just ordered, you know, our first round of product, and our whole team like helped sell those first bags together. And then from there, we just like grew that exponentially. Well, yeah, I think if you plotted it, it would be exponential. So, and then from there, we just like started finding opportunities to grow. I was talking to like some mentors and advisors, and like we were getting close to that like 500 number. And I was like, well, what's next? Like we're getting ready to sell through these 500 bags of coffee, but like what makes next in the business? And then like ultimately, you know, the answer was like, you know, figure out what your core values are and then go from there. So our team kind of took a step back, figured out like what was most important to us as a team. And then we just kept selling more coffee. So in that first 6 months, I think we sold like 1,100 bags of coffee to like 700 different people. And then this is now our second year. And we've sold already well over that. We're building our first cafe right now in Grand Rapids. So that would be like our first physical location, because we launched just like primarily an e-commerce business. We went to the farmers markets, which I think I heard like Synovia from Cellar Door was on a while ago. Like we were both at Fulton Street Farmers Market. So I have a ton of respect for just her, like as a business owner, and a lot of things that she's done. And then, yeah, so now we're getting ready to open that first physical location, and we will actually roast coffee in that location and have drinks and just like roll out a lot of things that like I am excited about that I think will help improve the overall coffee experience.
Okay, so what's the next milestone you're excited about, and what are the things that are kind of preventing you from getting there, or just the next things to be solved?
So I think that's kind of a two-part. Like, it's getting this first cafe open. Like, it's been under construction. We thought we were gonna open May 4th. Like, I was super excited about that. Just like with getting materials, getting contractors, like that didn't happen. So now we're looking at like a late August open date. But like, it's really one of those kind of like waiting games where it's like I'm not physically going in there and like building this space. So it's like we have a contract there, and like I'm just waiting on them to finish the building so we can open it. We want to do like a huge grand opening for that. So it's like with that, like that's kind of in the bag, but it's not here yet, right? Like, so after that is like opening up more locations. We really view ourselves as like an e-commerce first business. So we view our cafes as more of like distribution centers. So like, maybe imagine like an Amazon, right? So rather than having like, a cafe everywhere in a city or in a state, we just have like one cafe that roast, produce, and ship all of our online orders. So I would say like the next milestone or goal is getting that second and third cafes open. So we're looking at doing our second one in New York and then doing our third one in Texas. So I would say like the next big milestone is getting that second location open in a different geography. And then the roadblock to that right now is just finding capital, because we have to do payroll. We have a lot of people that on our team that just work for free because they're passionate about what we're doing, and that's awesome. But we have some people on our team that are paid too. So it's like, great, we want to open this other location. How do we pay for it? How much loans are we comfortable taking out? Real estate in New York is going to be more expensive to rent or purchase than real estate in Grand Rapids. So capital is kind of like that barrier. But we're solving that by selling more coffee, like just figuring out as a team how to sell more coffee. But we'll probably start looking at other funding sources as well too, to get those second and third cafes open.
Max,
I've got a question for Brian. So when your location is not in the same area as your other locations, how do you connect them and make them one location instead of small separate locations?
You're asking me or Arick?
Well, you.
Yeah, Arick, I'd be curious to hear. I mean, let's talk about it. I don't know the one answer. Like, do you have thoughts about the approach you're going to take?
Yeah. So I mean, for us, it's about community, right? I mean, like, unfortunately, we went through this whole situation with the pandemic, but it got people a lot further, like on technology, whether that's like doing Zoom calls, whether that's meeting virtually, or whether that's communicating like via text or Slack. Just like the way I've grown up and like my professional experience, like the idea of being on like a remote team doesn't scare me at all. So the lady that's working with us right now, who's going to be moving to Brooklyn, New York, like she started here. She's been like working with us for a while now, and she's going to like help kind of recreate exactly what we did in Grand Rapids over in New York. And then looking at our head of coffee now, her role is in part of like creating, like part of her description is like to create the connection between those two places so that they don't feel different, right? Like it's all our team. It's all like, we're not doing like a franchise model. Like, this is our cafes. And like part of those two roles with Suzanne and Mackenzie, if they're watching, hi, is to like, as we open these different locations, to keep them like physically connected and keep them, virtually connected. And then like create like some synergy where it's not like you're in a different state, therefore you're not part of what we're doing. So creating unified goals where we're all working towards the same thing, not like trying to put stores against each other, which is part of the excitement too, of like not opening another location in Grand Rapids or like even Detroit for that matter. It's like opening a completely different geographic, in part to bring in new customers, but there's like no sense of competition between like, oh, the Grand Rapids store is doing this and the Brooklyn store is doing that. It's like, no, we're all one team. We're all trying to elevate each other. I don't know if that answers your questions, but that's my thoughts on it so far.
Yeah, and I have like a related question, and you've kind of answered it. My question that I was thinking about was why open a second location and why open it so far away? And it sounds like part of what you're saying is to avoid competition with each other. What are the other reasons? Like why go open a place in New York? That sounds like harder than even opening one in Detroit or opening another one in Grand Rapids or whatever.
It is harder, but I think it's the right move. A lot of times, when something is harder, we tend not to do it. But in this case, I really think that spreading them out makes more sense because, again, like we're an e-commerce business, these are distribution centers. So we really want to also take advantage from like a very tactical standpoint of like the shipping differences. So rather than trying to ship all of our product from Michigan and, paying different shipping rates to like California and everywhere else, we're intentionally putting them in different zones because it's going to be cheaper and quicker to get something from like New York to Maine than it is to get something from Grand Rapids to Maine. And then once we get over to the West Coast, like same thing, like for the exact same package, I pay like $1.60 more to ship it to California versus shipping it to Chicago. So, you scale that out for an e-commerce business, if we're doing 10,000 bags a month, that's a lot of money and just energy wasted in shipping. So that's why for us, we thought it was important. And then also, instead of trying to like market to different areas, I think the best way to market is to have something physical, which is why we're doing the cafe. So from like an e-commerce business perspective, rather than like spending a bunch of money throwing ads at people in Brooklyn, like let's just open a cafe there and be a part of the community and like go to events and like, be a part of that area and then grow our New York market that way versus spending a bunch of money on trying to advertise. So that's my thought on like why it makes sense to space them out very intentionally. And what we've identified as our team is like fast growing. Like it doesn't have to be the biggest metropolitan, but we're looking for places that have like an established base, has a lot of people that drink coffee, and that it's fast growing because there's going to be people there that are excited to try a new coffee shop. And there's also new people coming into that place that is like looking for a coffee shop to call home. So we think that's just really exciting to try to seek out those places. And then again, with us being like an e-commerce first model, we don't have to try to get like, the prime downtown real estate with the highest foot traffic, because our key model is our key like KPI is like how many bags of coffee have we sold. So.
But, Jasmine and Max, I'd be curious if you guys have other questions for Arick. I had, started to make some notes and had some thoughts, but like, it'd be good to get the whole story out there first.
Yeah. I want to, if you guys don't mind, kind of take a little shift a little bit. I'm really interested in the e-commerce aspect of what you're doing. How and you're a software engineer, so you might be more educated on like these types of things than I am. But how are you getting leads? How are you selling coffee? How are you like, what's the base model of the e-commerce portion of it? And then like my thought process for that is like, is there a way that you can accumulate that cash flow and maybe think about investing into like influencer marketing or something along those lines, because you really do have those core values and the causes that you stand for. I think that like influencer marketing is blowing up. I think it's going to be like a $22 billion industry this year. So I know that like getting in while it's kind of low, and if you could find like a couple right influencers that hit every target of what you have, that could be a really great way to reach new markets without having to pay for a lot of advertising. You pay one time maybe. So that was one thought. And I'm really curious on like your e-commerce, like what is your business model with that and how is that performing?
Yeah, so influencer marketing is great. I think we will absolutely do it at some point. We had like a marketing strategy review with our team earlier this week about what we wanted to do and how we wanted to pivot. I guess I'll kind of take a step back from that and say that leading up to this point, our primary method of marketing, and this is going to sound crazy to you all, is going to markets. Like, so we go to the farmers market, we go to like these pop-up events, like people will invite us to different pop-up events. And the way we saw it is like, great, it's $50 to attend this market. We're going to sell coffee at this event. We're going to meet new customers that we haven't met before. And then I can actually like have a conversation with them and start to shape what our demographics look like, because I can actually get feedback. I can ask them questions. When you post an ad, the most you're going to get is like, did this person engage or did they not engage? Whereas like at a market, like one, we usually make money at every market we go to. And then two, like I don't have to guess. I can be like, oh, you're not interested? Why aren't you interested? And actually get follow-up information that way. So when you look at like, the 700 and so customers that we had last year, those are all people mostly that we met. Now there were a few that we didn't meet. And where did they come from? They came from other people marketing for us that loved our product. So that was our entire marketing strategy last year. So now looking at, this review that we have with our team with the cafe opening in August, I was trying to push them towards like, let's do more Instagram, let's do more TikTok, let's talk about what we want to budget. And the whole team unanimously was like, no, we want to do more community collaborations. So like what our team wants to do is actually find different partners in the community where we can collaborate and like advertise that way, which is still marketing, right? We're still one of the things that we're working on is there's a local grocery store. They like service like this really awesome neighborhood in Grand Rapids on the southeast side of town. They sell our coffee currently. They do these like EBT bundles, so like people that have like food stamps. And we're partnering with them to give samples to all of those people for free. Like, I don't know if they're going to buy coffee. Like, if they do, cool. But if not, like, we're still doing that. So, like, that's a marketing expense. That's going to cost a couple $100s, but that's a couple $100s that we're putting into the community rather than like putting into an influencer. So at some point we will do influencer marketing, but like right now our whole team kind of agrees that like the community aspect and building relationships in our community makes more sense. So if you look at all the coffee that we've sold, a lot of it will come from being at the markets. But when you look at our stickiest customers, they ultimately get on the website, they sign up for a subscription, and then we send them coffee every month. So from our perspective, like the unit economics is great. People are excited about the charity piece. When you check out, you can pick which cause you donate to. If someone buys a bag of coffee, like one bag of coffee, they pay a shipping fee and we ship it to them. So like we break even there. If they buy multiple bags of coffee, we'll do a priority box. They still get it pretty fast. They pay the same flat shipping rate. And then if someone signs up for a subscription, we don't actually discount the product. Instead, we just do the shipping completely for free. And just to make it nice and simple for them. So our thing is like growing the subscriptions because that's just money that we're getting in. But ultimately, if someone buys 4 bags of coffee at once, that's also great. So did I answer your question, Jasmine?
Yes, you did. And I'm just like so blown away. I mean, and this is just something that I'm just realizing is very common. Just traditional ways of doing things still hold true, even in this crazy social media world, that like you having that FaceTime, there is something special to that that you do miss, and you do have the opportunity to have those conversations. So I love that. My next question would be then like, have you guys thought about going into any like national markets, or maybe going to a market that was like something paired with coffee, maybe not a coffee market because that'd be like flooded, but maybe something that was like a little different, or maybe one of like a huge event for one of the core causes that you guys are promoting or something, and like setting up a booth there and then really getting in with all of those markets of people. That would be another idea that we have. But
it is something that we just started like talking about and like looking at different places that we may go to. We have not yet, but what we have done is like partner with a few like different companies that go to those shows that maybe like sell coffee equipment, and then they take our coffee, like they buy it from us and they take it and they sell it there, or not sell it, but they use it for their samples. So like that has been a segue into it, but we just run like a very like lean operation. Like all of the markets that we've been to, I think the most expensive one was like $125. So like if something has like a $500 like booth thing, we're like, okay, great. How many bags are we going to sell? And are we going to sell enough bags at that event to cover the cost and the labor? And if the numbers don't work, then we usually don't do it. Now, we'll absolutely make an exception if it's like a community-based thing. Like we're doing this huge event called Rock the Block in Grand Rapids. Like that, I don't remember exactly what we just paid for that one, but I think that is now like our most expensive event. And I don't know if we're going to make money on it or not, but it's like in our neighborhood and we want to support it. So
yeah, absolutely. Okay. And then my last question, and I'll like go back to if there's anything that Max or Brian, you guys want to add, but what would it take to get these individuals that are using your coffee, that you've built this relationship for their booths? Can they get a little like an Instagram reel or a TikTok or a photo of them while they're there? And then like, cause that's like almost, I don't want to say free. I don't know what your relationship is with them, but it's almost like an influencer, but yet an influencer within your niche of like the people you're trying to reach and for that greater cause. So I don't know if you're already doing that, but that would be my last thought for that.
I did not, and I wrote it down because that is a great idea. And if you ask, people will say yes. So I mean, if they say yes, then great. So thank you for that.
The worst thing they can do is say no, and then it's just an opportunity for you. So yeah, love it. Okay, that was like my questions that I have right now. And I'm just blown away that in this crazy social media world that like you're building your e-commerce business like face to face, which is like so cool. And I love that.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, just like real quick, like I did a little bit of technology consulting before this. And the biggest thing that I would always tell people was like, are you getting your customers' emails?
Mhm.
Right. So it's even though we're going to market, like we try to get everyone that buys a bag email. And we get like a lot of them. If they buy something from us, we end up getting their email address so that we can like remarket. All of our emails right now, I think, have like a 50-ish% open rate. Like Sarah will have the exact number. So it's like, you know, we are an e-commerce business, but again, like nothing beats like having a conversation with someone and getting to know them, but then still, you know, actually getting their email address so that you can like remarket and follow up with them later. So I think they have to go hand in hand.
Absolutely. And then, okay, one more question. I lied. Are you doing that remarketing? So like with all those emails that you guys have, are you doing a MailChimp or a Constant Contact like once a month? Like at least even if you weren't doing any sales whatsoever, you could, because you are in such that like cool, like value brought core values for a cause type stuff, you could give industry news and updates consistently.
Yeah.
Like you can just do that daily. And I think like on repetition, like that's not going to get annoying for anybody in their inbox because it is like it's a cause, you know what I mean? And there's value being brought. That could be something that you could have on automation too, spending a couple hours getting that set up to where you really just kind of back away and you set up your automations for the month and you do that like monthly or bi-monthly or work with your team on doing that. From a digital marketing standpoint, I would definitely utilize that as much as possible. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. We could definitely do more of that. That was one of the things that came up in our strategy review as well. We don't send a lot of emails out, but every time we send an email out, we make money. And usually they're just like announcements and everything else. So we could do a better job at remarketing, but what we really try to do is just stay in people's minds, like make sure that we're popping up, whether in their newsfeed or on Instagram or in their stories. And a lot of times when we announce something, we'll see like, okay, great, that post, we ended up getting like, you know, 5 more bags of coffee sold. So we could do a better job at like actually coming up with like a remarketing strategy. And so thank you for that as well. And I'm so excited this is recorded because like I'm gonna go back and watch this and I'm so stoked.
I love it. Yeah, no, I would definitely recommend, just because the fact, and I know you're busy, you have a lot going on, but like if anything that you can get an automation to free up your time and your energy so you can get that face-to-face with those other individuals while you're building that residual and just having things on automation, I think that would be really, really lucrative and really smart for you. So
thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Max, you got any questions?
I've got questions. Unless you want to go.
No.
Okay. But this is a question that Brian asks a lot, and I think it's a great question. What is your bread and butter? And what is your revenue? What's going to bring in the revenue? What's going to allow you to open up those 10 locations? And is that going to stay the same when you have those 10 locations open, or is that going to change?
Yeah, so bags of coffee, like bags, full bags, we do 300-gram bags of coffee sold is our bread and butter. Why? Because green coffee is good for a long time. People will get into nuances on how long. Once it's roasted, again, it's good for a long time. People will get into nuances on how long. We say our coffee is good for 6 months. I think it's going to take the best within that range. Technically, on shelf life, you can go a year or 2, but I have not had 2-year-old coffee that tastes good, so I'm not going to put that on our labels. So we say our shelf life is 6 months, which is great. We sell most of our coffee within about like 2 weeks, though, from it being roasted, which is better for us anyway, because then we're not storing a bunch of inventory. And again, with the bags of coffee, we can label them in advance, we can bag them in advance, and then we can sell them on the website. Like there's not like a direct one-to-one labor expectation like you would see in a cafe. Like if you have a cafe, you have to have it fully staffed. If customers aren't coming in, then like what are those people doing? Bags of coffee is different because when they're bagging coffee, they can do that all time. And then it sits there, and then we can ultimately sell like an infinite number of bags of coffee online. Whereas with a cafe model, you can only sell so many drinks per the staff that you have. And like your cafe is going to be space constrained, even if you did have unlimited labor on like how many drinks you can actually ever sell per hour. But with this, you know, with bags being our bread and butter, you can sell infinite number of bags, and then having that decentralized just gives us more capacity to sell more, right? Because let's say someone orders a bag in Detroit, but like let's say the Grand Rapids location is like slammed, that doesn't mean like the New York location can't ship to Detroit. Like that's not ideal, but all of these systems and like us using technology on the back end is like we can optimize for efficiency. But if one cafe is ever like overstrained, then we can still ship from a different location if need be. So I would say bagged coffee is always going to be our bread and butter. And then we're going to add like, things to support that, like, at home latte kits, like different brewing stuff. So we'll add all stuff to support that side of the business. But bags of coffee to the consumer, I think is and will always be our bread and butter. I could be wrong though. Ask me in 10 years.
So what was I forgot what I was going to say. I blanked out.
Well, maybe what I could do is just walk through some of my just notes that I was been taking here. So, Arick, I'm really impressed by your story. I'm really impressed by your presentation. I agree, you are like clearly a good salesperson. Here are the things that I wrote down that I'm really impressed by. I'm really impressed that you guys are intentional about the business you're starting. I think that the fact that you're have started other companies in the past, and this is like your third one, and you made really sort of like intentional choices about the business that you wanted to get into. I think that that's, most people don't do that. So I think that we should celebrate that. I think that I can tell you're a clear thinker. That engineering background or whatever it is, you definitely, I like the way you think about problems, and so I'm impressed by that. I think that your founding team has a lot of really complementary and necessary skills. So I think that you guys started the team, the founding team really started off with the right skills needed to succeed. And I like that you're milestone driven. I think you are talking in terms of, I love that 500 bags of coffee. We're going to sell that 500 bags, and then we're going to see what's next after that. We're going to get this cafe open, and then we're going to go to see what's next with that. So I think that that's a really good way to think as an entrepreneur. So I think that just speaks to the experience you've got. I noticed that and appreciate that. And I think that, if I were an investor, I would be impressed in so many ways about what you're doing. I'd be likely to invest, I think, in the business. I think there's a lot of success components. The thing that would give me pause is that I think that this idea of retail stores and cafes being distribution hubs and marketing centers is very exciting. I think that that's a cool concept, and I think that I believe it could be true. I believe that it might be the thing that launches you to the billion-dollar business. However, that is a hypothesis that is completely untested at this point. And when I hear you talk about the limitations and the struggles, the physical build out of a cafe, the capital like intensiveness of building out a cafe and staffing up a cafe and all this stuff, this is completely different than an e-commerce coffee business. And they might be a marriage made in heaven. It might just multiply you to that exponential growth forever. But man, as I think about handing you a check, if I know that my check's going to this test and not to the business that you've already figured out, that gives me pause. I wonder. So I'm going to try to turn it into a question. Given that you're intentional, you're a clear thinker, you've got this engineering background, can you share, is there other data that I'm not seeing about either the markets you're entering or the marketing dollars that you're spending and getting back? Is there data that supports the story of this retail operation as essential? Or is that story just still being written, I guess?
I think that story is still being written. I appreciate the question though, and I appreciate the observation as well. Part of what I observed was, and I'll kind of focus on 2 points. One, when we looked at the pandemic last year, and I don't have the exact data, I can email it to you though, but when the pandemic started, a lot of coffee businesses closed their like physical cafes. And then there was a huge uptick in coffee sales. I think it was like about 200%. The most interesting thing that happened is like Folgers, Maxwell House, those coffee sales went down. And then like McCafe, Dunkin' Donuts, like Big B, like Starbucks, those brands went up. Why? Because people were like, oh, I can't physically go there, but I can like make it at home. I don't think, from what I know, none of those companies like intentionally had a strategy of like, how do we make the brewing at home experience like the best that we can? The number of people brewing at home also has like went up a lot as well. We don't know how much that's going to change like rolling out of the pandemic, but as a society, we've been like convenience driven forever. So if I can make the same quality of drink at home and it's going to taste as good and someone's giving me like exact instructions on how to do it, and it's going to be quicker and it's going to be cheaper than like waiting in line or something, I think there are a lot of people that will do that. Now, again, that's still my hypothesis. I think also, you know, the regular cafes will still be there and they will exist. So that's just my thought, is like these brands that had a physical location attached to it where people could like see it and like whether you're going or not, but they could just picture, you know, what sitting in a coffee shop feels like. Those brands are doing better and better. So it gives someone something where they can like see and touch it even if they're not there. The second point that I will say is, with this distribution model, the thing that we're excited about is that we get to employ people in like neighborhoods that maybe like underserved or just underprivileged. Like where we're opening our cafe at right now, like there's no coffee shops in that neighborhood. Like that's a neighborhood that I grew up in and there's no coffee shops there. The exciting thing about that is our rent is also cheaper because, you know, like I said, we aren't trying to be like right downtown. So with our like decentralized distribution model kind of being at the center of what we're doing so that we can get people fresher coffee faster, we have to package and bag that coffee somewhere anyways. So why not throw like an espresso machine in there and a brewer and like create that local content feel and vibe, and then drive our marketing strategy like, this is our Texas location. Look at what our Texas location is doing. Like, look at the people that are in here. Like, have people tell their stories in Texas as part of like driving like what that experience is like, versus, you know, us not having a location in Texas and like having one huge distribution center in Michigan and trying to ship everything from there. So that is a guess, right? But that's me like looking at where I think the market is going to go, and like just based on the research that I've done, I think the combination of those two, I think it is a match made in heaven, and I think is where the industry is going.
Well, I'm excited to see, you know, what the results look like. I also think that you're probably right. So, you know, I think that the team that you started out with was perfect for the very simple e-commerce sell bags of coffee business. Tell me about, as you get into physical locations, who on your team is like the operations guru, like spreadsheet driven, nuts and bolts, like, great idea, Arick. I'm glad you're selling that vision, but here's the reality of like how we got to run this thing so that we, you know, don't burn through cash.
Yeah. So that's actually the person that like I'm looking for now. Like we built out like a very technology driven, like a bunch of people that love coffee. But yeah, I'm looking, one of my, I don't know if I would call him a mentor yet, but someone I was just talking to about the business was like, yeah, you have a big goal on like that on that like CFO like type position. So like we're trying to figure out who that's going to be now. Like, I mean, it absolutely has to be a culture fit and someone that's like emotionally prepared for startup life. But I would say like that like CFO controller is like absolutely a hole that we have. I would say in the meantime, I am able to sit and like look operationally at the details. Sarah, who was like my partner and our original co-founder, she is very much the person to say, great, but how are we going to pay for that? And then Mackenzie is our head of coffee. She's going to be running this first cafe, and she comes in with like a lot of like physical cafe experience as well. So that being our core team, plus like our set of advisors, we have like enough guidance to especially get the first cafe open, and then budgeting to get the second cafe open. But I think having like a physical full-time, you know, maybe even like part-time, you know, 20-ish hours a week type of person that does like really know the numbers and like breathe them and lives them, I think that's absolutely a hole that we're trying to fill right now and figuring out what that's going to look like. Did I answer your question though?
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's great. So I don't know, Jasmine and Max, I was going to shift gears a little bit. Anything else before I do that?
I would just say that you have a unique e-commerce business because part of it is donated, right? Some of what you purchase is donated to a cause. Are these local causes or are these national causes?
Yeah, it's both. And part of what Sarah is doing is like constantly looking at that model and trying to figure out what makes the most sense. The way that we're doing it, to like, we're committed to the 10% of all revenue. Like, we're committed to that, but we realize that like that's gonna have to like change, and like the execution of it will change over time as we grow. Right now, the way it works is when you buy a bag of coffee, you can pick between youth at risk, clean drinking water, environmental justice, or criminal justice reform. Your money goes into one of those 4 buckets. Then every quarter we text everyone that's like in this text community that we have, and we say, hey, we raised $1,100 for clean drinking water. What charity do you want it to go to? And then our community then nominates those organizations where the money goes. So like sometime it's been nominated to like a local organization, like for us, like WEMEAG, or we did Flint Rising one time. There's an organization called like AYA, which is based in Grand Rapids and does like stuff with youth. But then one time it was like rescue.org, which is like an international organization. So we really wanted to put the power in the community, because the whole point is like, it's your money. Like, you're giving it to us, and like, thank you for that. But like, ultimately, like, we're doing this donation as part of something that we believe, but we wanted the people to be able to have say over where it goes. So, yeah.
No,
did that answer the question? I started rambling, and I don't know if I.
No, it's great. I really like that idea of it brings the community in, and you let them know that you've raised X amount and it's going to this place, and they see it move from their checkbook to you, then to the next place. I think that's great.
Exactly. Thank you.
So I'm interested in learning more about. Every time I go to Grand Rapids, everybody there tells me how great Grand Rapids is. I've never seen a city with more pride from its citizens.
Yeah.
If I were to go to Grand Rapids to experience the epicenter of why Grand Rapids is great, where should I go? When should I go, and where should I go?
It's a hard question. I wish I would have known that one in advance. I would say that one, yes, the city has a lot of great pride. It's just like a great balance of a lot of things. So much room for improvement, but like at its core, we're a great city, like right on the water, not too big, not too small. So sorry, I'm falling into that cliche of people that love Grand Rapids. But I would say I love like Frederick Meyer Gardens. Like, it's one of my favorite places in the world. It's like an indoor outdoor garden. They have okay coffee. They could have better coffee. Maybe we'll fix that. But it's just like sincerely one of my favorite places to go. And they have this like huge like tropical room, so you can go in the winter and it's like you're in the Bahamas or something. So I would say check that out. But then also like go downtown, because there's like great stuff to see, and like you're by the river and you can walk around. They have a lot of cool museums. I think just like walking around and just seeing like what fits you. I think that's the cool thing about Grand Rapids, is there's so much that like what I would do, on like a Saturday to kill time might not be what you would do, but we have a lot of it. We have like art museums, we have like public museums, we have like, the African American Museum. We have like a bunch of different restaurants and stuff. You go downtown, you can just walk on the water, you can just like go hiking. So I would say come like spring, fall, maybe like midsummer, and I would just do whatever your heart desires. And Grand Rapids allows that.
My last question is, what can we and others do to help you succeed? We'd love to see you succeed and prove that this works and be a big success. What can we do to help?
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I mean, I think this helped. This gives me like a lot of information just to go back to and look at, and I will watch this, like however many views this video has, like 10% of that's probably me. So, I mean, I appreciate this, like first and foremost. I think going forward is like, we're trying to sell like more bags of coffee. I think we are trying to find someone that is a culture fit, like for that CFO role, or like, finance role. But I think like the biggest thing you can do is just like, this is going to be like a real hokey answer, but I think just like try to just continue to like to serve and give in your communities. Like, I think that as our core pillars, like what we're trying to do is help make the world a better place. I'm sad that Mike isn't here. Like his book like changed my life like for the better. And I think I've told him this like virtually, but like I look up to Bigby like in so many ways. But one like core point that me and Mike disagree on is like I think people should go drink whatever coffee they want. And Mike kind of has this like everyone should drink Bigby attitude, which I fully respect. But like to me, it's like you should go drink whatever coffee you want. I'm at a place like called the Narrows right now in Detroit. Like, you know, I'm supporting them. It's fun. It's a cool vibe. So I'm not going to ask you to drink more coffee. I'm not going to ask you to support us, but I would say like, look at your community and like, look at your friend group and just like try to find ways to improve the people that are around you and like really just try to like live your passion. And I think if more people do that, the world will be a better place. So if you want to support me, I think just like try to keep doing stuff like this, like mentor other people, just try to give back and try to help make this world a more inclusive place. Because ultimately, that's what I'm going to do. You know, if you put your money into Last Mile, if you buy a bag of coffee, I'm just going to find ways to serve people. So let's cut the middleman out. Why don't you just go out and serve people?
Yeah, that's good.
That's awesome. Oh, you're so sweet. That just like warmed my heart. I'm like, oh, that was awesome. Oh, I love that.
Thank
and
you.
I agree. Yes, we all should do great in our community. And you are doing great things. I appreciate you for coming on here today. Does anybody want to add anything? This is your last chance to ask any questions? Anything? No?
No,
All right.
all my questions were answered.
I would ask Ryan, just like knowing all of the experience that you have, like what's another hole that you would poke in the business? I mean, I know that and maybe you have a follow-up question first, but I mean, like, is there any other like things that you think we could do better, or other things that we should focus on? And, you know, and if you do have a question to get us there, I'm happy to answer it as well.
Yeah, right. Man, I just love, I love the inside out approach. I love the stand on the ground approach of being in front of customers. I love being face to face with people. I think that that's just such a good reminder. Those are things I've learned and things I've done about there's so much power to having really high quality, even if it's not as many face to face interactions with people. So I'm just like, I'm taking away that as a reminder for myself to whatever my version of a farmer's market is, to make sure I'm there. And yeah, and I'm just, it's not that I'm nervous. It's just that I'm like, this whole idea of getting real estate, building out the cafes, then scale and doing the same thing in New York, you know, while the first one's underway. I feel like you're not standing on the ground anymore. You know, like you're taking a leap, and you know what? Sometimes you got to do that too. And all billion-dollar businesses have that story of taking that leap. So this could be that for you. You know, my question is, how quickly will you be able to recognize if that's not true in this case? And will you be able to rebound and adjust accordingly quick enough? You know, I almost went out of business early on in my company because we were projecting out this growth, and we were like, if we're going to do it, we got to make this big bet. And we started to do it, and I should have known earlier that it wasn't working, but I kind of just like was like, we have to believe, you know, like all the cliches, like you have to leap, you know, all this stuff. And you know what? All I did was just burn a huge pile of money. And if I just would have figured it out quicker and cut and then regrouped, and then you can make another leap. You know what I mean? It's just like making the right size of the leap. So I don't know. That's what I have in my heart, you know, like leaving here is I know I know you have the beginnings of success of some kind, and will you be able to adjust quick enough if whatever this leap isn't the right leap?
Yeah. Thank you.
Which you have full faith that you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm excited about it. I'm glad you said that, right? Because now I can like focus on it and like answer that question, because I'm definitely like a once I say I'm going to do something type of guy. I just got to figure it out. But you know, you did give me a little pause there because there's things about New York that are like more challenging, and there's things about Texas that are like more opening and like easier. So that even just gave me a little bit of pause to just like reevaluate, you know, where do we do that second location? But yeah, I want to do a better job of like identifying. Like right now, I know how many sales we have in New York. I have some data about like how many people drink coffee in New York and like go to different like coffee shops and stuff, especially like in Brooklyn. So like for me, all the signs are there that like there's fertile ground, but there's definitely like legal and like city and like you got to register the business and all of this type of stuff and like taxes and everything else. So I do want to like, you know, my first guess would be like, oh, well, are we selling more coffee on the East Coast? And like, are we selling enough? Are we on track to sell enough coffee to like ultimately pay for that location? But I think again, like even if we got there and we weren't, rather than saying like, should we close the New York location? I would say, what can we do to sell more coffee there and go that approach? But I mean, is that the right mindset as far as like trying to evaluate if it's working or not, or would you expect something else?
I guess, you know, I'm intrigued by the idea of having each cafe being a node for shipping to support the e-commerce business. But you could also just have a node to ship coffee from that is very inexpensive. So there's an elegance to what you're trying to do, and I think you should do it. I just remember distinctly this moment of sitting in my office and we were spending more money and our revenue started to go down. So like our marketing spend was going up, our revenue not only had stopped, but it started to go down. And I remember being like, spend more money on marketing. Like we got to outpace it and I wish I just would have been like, oh, looks like our marketing isn't working. Like, let's stop doing that. So if you just get to that point and you see the data and it looks weird and you're like, wow, we opened that location and like, it didn't really increase our sales of our coffee. And it sure did cost us a lot of time and money and staff and stress to have that physical retail location.
Yeah.
Listen to it. You know what I mean? Just be like, okay, good try. Like maybe we just have a warehouse with one employee who ships coffee to Maine, you know?
Yeah.
And don't let that sort of like failed experiment kill all these amazing things that you're doing, which are amazing. You know what I mean? Yeah. But maybe it won't be a failed experiment. Maybe all your experiments will be successes.
Yeah, I love that optimism. Thank you so much.
No, I love that. I think that makes sense. And I just took a little mental note myself too. I'm like, you never know if something's not working, pay attention. And definitely marketing for you. I'm like, if there's anything that I would recommend, and I would be more than happy to hop on a call with you and really like dig deep and talk about like your automations, your retargeting, email campaigns, all that kinds of stuff, like getting just a funnel set up to where it's almost like that's on automation that could be generating revenue that could fund your location too. So like that's just a way maybe that could help the cause. So okay.
Jasmine, I'd love someday we should do like a tutorial on influencer marketing. I don't know a lot about it.
Yes, no, definitely. Anything. I'm here.
What you said about it sort of being early days still and like potentially affordable.
Yes.
Not even necessarily saying for Arick, but just like in general, like I'd like to learn more about that.
Well, it's just becoming so popular right now, and with like brands and like bigger, like Nike, you could become an affiliate with Nike. What branch you are or what the compensation is obviously is different for each person, but like there's so many different revenues right now. So yes, I would love to do that. All right, guys, we're gonna wrap up today's event. I'm very excited for you, Arick. I feel like you have a big vision and a big mission, and I am like fully supportive of all of the amazing things that you're trying to achieve. Again, feel free to reach out. I would love to speak with you to really hone in on your funnel and help you generate that. Would love the opportunity. And thank you, gentlemen, for being here today. Thank you for everybody who is joining us today. I hope everybody had a few takeaways. And we are going to do this again next Thursday at 1 p.m. And I hope, no, we're not doing it next Thursday at 1 p.m. Just kidding. No event next week, but we will be following week. We're going to pick back up. Okay. All right. That sounds good. All right. Thank you, guys. I hope everybody has a great rest of your day, and we will see you then.
Thanks, Arick. Thanks, everybody.